Good morning again, everyone. My name is Andres Montenegro, Sustainability Director at the SCA. And our next speaker is Luis Fernando Samper, who finds his purpose in creating and measuring collective value with a focus on origin, branding, and geographical indication. He is a co-author of several publications, including the power role of intangible in the coffee value chain and towards a balanced sustainability vision for the coffee industry. In this session, Luis Fernando will explore the role of intangible in the process of value creation and distribution in coffee, often overlooked but increasingly relevant in coffee experiences design as key quality signals. Luis Fernando, Don Luis, it's great to have you here with us today. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Andres, and many thanks to all the team at the SCA for the invitation to share some of the thoughts on about value creation and value appropriation and the role of intangibles, particularly in coffee. And some of you may have heard or may have seen this curve, which is the SMILE curve. And this is a curve that basically shows that value is basically accumulated in the innovation phase and in the branding and distribution phase of pretty much every product. Think about semiconductors, think about mobile phones, think about clothing. The value tends to be accumulated in the innovation and branding and distribution. And in the production, not necessarily the value is significant. Production is outsourced in many industrial products. So this is sort of a concept that has been around for some time. In Rico, a couple of years ago, I sort of depicted the SMILE curve of the coffee industry as a smile that is leaning to the right, meaning there is more value in branding and distribution. There is some value in innovation. Clearly, there are some innovative concepts that create value, but there is more value on the end or the final mile or the end of the value chain. And coffee producers tend to be squeezed in the middle. At that point, we calculated that 10% of the, or a little bit less than 10% of the overall value of the coffee industry at that time, $200 billion or so, was accrued to producers. And then we created or explained, how can we modify this? How can we modify this coffee industry SMILE? And on the one hand, we said we need to generate more value generation. So move this curve upwards so that you could get more value for all actors in the coffee value chain. And in the distributional aspect, you have to enhance or increase the room where coffee producers are. And that's the objective. I sort of suggested the idea that we, as an industry, have the collective challenge of changing our SMILE curve, making it leaning, or more upwards, moving it upwards, and creating more room for producers, so that we could move from that 10% or 15 or 20% of overall this value distribution to the growers. So that's an aspect that we need to consider when we are talking about value generation, and value distribution. The specific, and I call it the labyrinth of value generation and distribution. The specific product attributes are one of the paths, and these paths may interconnect, as you can see in this labyrinth, this Minotaur labyrinth. So you have the specific product attributes is one aspect. The value chain governance and transaction costs are another aspects. The consistency and reliability over time, the informational value, the past experiences, which is something similar to extrinsic values in the SCA protocol, and then the product knowledge and differentiation narratives. All of these, play into value generation and distribution. So I'm going to be talking about these four aspects, some of them in more detail than others. So let's move to the specific product quality attributes. And here, Kim already mentioned, the key aspects here are reduce information asymmetry, reduce what they call the transaction costs or price discovery costs, so that buyers and sellers know what they're buying and what they're saying. So the SCA grading, descriptive and effective analysis, the intrinsic value of their coffees, is something that is being tackled this part of the labyrinth. So this is something that I'm not going to talk much more about, because there are many experts on this field today. The second part of the labyrinth is a little bit more challenging, which is the value chain governance and transaction costs. This is something that it started in the literature some 20 or 30 years ago, talking about the apparel industry, and then there is a number of different analyses of different value chains that basically describe the formal and informal rules that orbit over specific transactions along the value chain, and limit or enhance or make possible economic upgrading possibilities for certain actors, being local manufacturers or other actors along the chain. So you have, for instance, Taiwan now producing semiconductors. They found an upgrade possibility. Before they were just contract manufacturers, and now they have found an upgrading possibility in producing semiconductors themselves. So that vary across the industry and specific situations and specific contexts and specific segments, to the point that you could have in the same industry different types of governance. How are those types of governance? In principle, there are 5 different types of value chain governance. Some of them have the ability or limit the ability of economic upgrade. Some of them are more leaning to economic upgrade. Some of them can allow differentiation from above or from below or from both. So this, I'm not going to talk much about it, but I'm going to summarize, for the purposes of the coffee industry, summarize 3 types of value chain governance. The market-driven governance, which is, little or no differentiation for sellers before buyers. So price becomes the only differentiator. This is the market-driven governance. You have a modular or captive governance that allows some differentiation for farmers or for producers. For instance, sustainability certifications or other, aspects that allow differentiation, but still buyers can pick and choose who to buy from, because it is not enough. The intangible does not belong to producers; it belongs to someone else. And then we have the relational governance, where you have mutual dependency between buyers and sellers. And this is, fertile ground for innovation and enhanced product knowledge. We saw the Hacienda del Roble example of this, that we categorize as a farm or a producer that is leaning on developing relational relations, strong relations with its buyers. Okay. Now, the third part of the labyrinth is the consistency and reliability over time. And this is very much looks as extrinsic value signals of information based on past experience. So you value certain aspects of your or information or data points of the coffee you're buying. It, is because past experience has shown that this country of origin or this process type or other relevant data points are important for you. You have not tried them in this particular coffee lot that you're buying, but the informational aspect that that coffee lot carries gives you value, gives you some signals as to what you're willing to buy. And this is very much similar to branding. You end up buying a particular brand because you trust it, and you trust it because of your past experience, and your past experience is because there is some information, data points or relevant attributes of that brand that you consider valuable. So the issue is how these extrinsic attributes can be made to work in favor of farmers, or how you can play with that to obtain economic upgrade possibilities. So that's one aspect to discuss. So, for instance, let's look at sustainability seals. This is information from the Coffee Barometer 2023, and you see that some sustainability certifications have higher premiums than others. So, for instance, these UTC and 4C, usually they have lower premiums for green coffee, and the relationship between demand and supply is that pretty much half or a little bit less than half of what is produced is actually sold as UTC or 4C. So there is an imbalance there. Probably the very best balanced certifications according to Coffee Barometer are the organic and the Starbucks cafe practices. But still, there is a lot of farmers as in a differentiation strategy cannot guarantee that they have demand for this coffee that they have certified. They have to incur in the 100% of all the farm to be able to produce part of the or sell part of the production with the certification. And if you are buying fair trade, you can buy fair trade from Colombia, from Guatemala, from I don't know, Indonesia, Uganda, because the buyer is looking for fair trade. Is not necessarily looking for origin fair trade or for a particular community fair trade. So you don't really obtain loyalty to your own coffee or your own coffee community because you are reliant in someone else's intangible. Now, so let's look at origin. So there is a business-to-business case for origin equity. We just saw Kim's presentation on the most valuable extrinsic attributes, and the country of origin and process type appear to be on the top side, and there are other origin-linked attributes that probably score a little bit less, but they still are way up in the top. So apparently the green coffee buyers, so the professionals, are looking for these type of attributes. There is a survey made for the USA Feed the Future program a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic, and there were, according to the buyers of Ethiopian coffees, some attributes associated with country of origin that they felt that created value for them. So there is origin equity to explore, to understand, and to develop from a B2B perspective. This is another survey made by Perfect Daily Grind, And this was from out of 62 coffee professionals, which origins they preferred for blends. And then you saw a number. I mean, these are of course leaning on the specialty coffee professionals. So you get very high scores for Ethiopia and this type of origins. But origins are in the back of their mind clearly for B2B or green coffee buyers. The B2C, I'm sorry, this is not B2B, but B2C origin equity is also there. This is the NCA 2023 spring survey, and consumers, this is the whole sample of consumers, 1,500 consumers in the USA market, North American market. They claimed that over half of consumers claimed that these were country of origin was important, or single origin was important. There is information of where coffee is grown was also a top scorer. So there is more information, or more you look at that information, how many of those consumers considered or were aware of particular origins. These were the scores. Colombia, 80% of consumers knew that Colombia was a coffee producer. 62% claimed to know Brazil was a coffee producer, and so on and so forth. And then you would say, how many of these people thought that coffee was good or tasted very good? And then 70% of these 80% of consumers thought about Colombia as an origin that produced very, very good coffee. So you multiply that 80 times 70, and you get like 56% of overall consumers have a very good image of Colombia, 31 Brazil, and so on and so forth. This is, of course, I highlight Colombia because I was at some point working on these programs. And for those interested, they could look into a book that we published some time ago about that is entitled Juan Valdez, the Strategy Behind the Brand. So, Ethiopian coffee is another example of how prices for Ethiopian coffee are generally higher, although they vary quite a bit, and we are going to talk about that. They can vary quite a bit among second wave and third wave roasters, and this is the source of this is a survey made by Premium Quality Consulting earlier this year. Anyway, so I think origin has to play a role, and that's the third labyrinth. And the fourth section of the labyrinth is, of course, product knowledge and differentiation narratives. So how can we generate loyalty to origin so that we can expand the room where coffee producers are in this smile curve? Because sometimes, so far, the narrative of origin is mostly on certifications, varietals, and process. And the origin aspect is important, but is not adequately explained or understood. And we tend to overplay the emotions associated with farmer stories, but not the rational elements that come with understanding the impact of origin and quality. So I personally believe that emotions open the door for consideration, but do not necessarily generate loyalty or long-term loyalty from either buyers or consumers unless you have a very strong rational arguments. And let me explain you that in a complete separate industry. Let's look at the luxury car market, and this is a advertising piece of some time ago. If you look at this advertising piece, you see that the buyer of this car this expensive car. It looks young, handsome, successful. He has a girlfriend or a lady that is looking at him with admiration, and you sort of get the message that if you buy that car, it's because you are successful. So you want to demonstrate success uh, uh, by buying that car. That's sort of the message that you get. So in coffee, we play emotions basically with farmer content on stories and probably culture a little bit, which is fine. It opens the door for consideration. It opens the door for trying to know a little bit more about that coffee or that region or that place. But as I said earlier, it does not guarantee loyalty. Loyalty comes from repeat purchase, and it was also mentioned in the previous session. Repeat purchase is loyalty, and is the most valuable thing that you can have in marketing. Just one trial, one purchase is not enough. You have to get repeat purchase again and again and again, and there are consumers have several options. Green coffee buyers have several options, and you have to develop the reasons why these people will come back to you and will justify the price that they are willing to pay for your product or your coffee. So let's go back to the car industry. So what are the rational arguments that brands give consumers to buy their expensive cars? So this is one example. The brand tells the consumer, well, you know what, if you buy this car, you will be able to reach 100 kilometers per hour in 4 seconds. That's a very rational argument. That so if that buyer of that car is asked, why do you want to buy this car, the buyer will not say, well, I want to buy this car because I want to demonstrate success. No, he will come back to you with a rational argument to justify his or her behavior by saying, no, I buy this car because I reach 4 seconds. In 4 seconds, I reach 100 kilometers. So the brand justifies or explains to consumers a reason why to buy the car on a rational terms. On rational terms. However, when we go back to coffee, we don't have much rational arguments to explain origin differences. Why do coffees taste the way they taste? This is again the same survey made to Ethiopian green coffee professionals, and what is the information that they are requiring for their suppliers? And some of them talk about GPS coordinates and elevation, yes, but most of them are talking about emotional, not rational arguments. So the ability to explain why that coffee tastes the way it tastes is not really substantiated. So buyers don't have rational arguments to explain to their consumers, and that's something that we talk about generic, we talk about the elevation, we talk about other aspects, but we are not very concrete at that. So let me explain that in terms of a quality equation. So if we want to be able to explain why origin plays a significant role in quality, we have to sort of understand that quality is a function of the genotype's interaction with environment. And whatever you do in harvesting and post-harvesting, fermentation, everything that was explained by the Penagos person, is also important for quality. And then you get, your quality as an outcome. However, what does, out of these variables, what is appropriable or what is not easily replicable from a farmer perspective, from a producer perspective? Genotypes can travel. Yeah. In fact, if you tell your consumer that what is most important is geisha, well, we'll have geisha from Panama, geisha from Colombia, or geisha from whatever, because the focus of your attention is geisha, and that is an intangible that does not necessarily belong to producers. Harvesting and post-harvesting are processes, methods that can be replicated in different origins. So they don't necessarily belong to producers as well. They have to do it well. Yes, they have to use the most modern and sophisticated techniques. I agree, but that doesn't mean that they can build loyalty from their origin out of those using those processes. So the environment is the most difficult to replicate, and is linked to origin, to a particular place or a particular location. So that's why I believe that one of the extrinsic attributes that we need to understand better and be a lot more profound in understanding it is origin. And there is some work already done in that regard. Brazil has already 12 geographical indications. That means coffees coming from particular areas that have particular standards, where quality is linked to origin. You will see in Ethiopia, for instance, you have very different and distinct origins that have distinct quality profiles, but we don't understand very well still why these coffees taste differently. What are the quality equations associated with each of these different regions? In fact, we don't have a common agreement on how these particular regions taste like. I did some analysis of how Ethiopian coffees are described by different importers earlier this year, and I then I selected Guji, the Guji region in Ethiopia, and I assume that most of these sellers were selling uh, grade 1 or grade 2 Gujis, and they had different descriptors. In general, it was not easy to find a single descriptor. I'll show you this. These were sort of the words that were used by the different buyers. And then we also thought, well, but maybe this is grades 1 and 2. I mean, this chart, I have to explain it a little bit. These are all the Guji exports of Ethiopia, which is like 6% of all total Ethiopian exports. And Guji prices are generally 50% above the Ethiopian coffee export average. And the most important markets for Guji are the United States and the European Union, which is pretty much like 50% of overall Guji exports. And we look at those two markets. They buy, United States buy, grade 1s and grade 2 Gujis, but they have 1/3 of Gujis that are below grade. So how can you protect the Guji name in the American market if people are selling substandard Gujis? What sort of message are you giving? How can you protect the reputation of Guji? Someone was talking about policing a specialty coffee or policing something. There are in fact intellectual property instruments to sort of to define what the standards are, and what can be called Guji and what cannot be called Guji. So there are possibilities of enhancing the intangibles of producers, or the collective intangible of producers, using intellectual property instruments. Colombia has gone a road towards differentiation of its regions, also using these intellectual property instruments. using technology and trying to get protection of the different origins to make sure that people are not abusing or using coffees or the coffee descriptors from certain regions that from which they don't come from. In terms of rational arguments, there were studies made for food pairing. In this case, Huila coffee from Colombia, to see how these coffees would mix better in terms for recipes or for new preparations and so forth. So these were sort of the rational arguments that were explained, or the probability maps of where you could find higher or lower presence of certain compounds that are related to quality attributes. So this is sort of a start of something that has to be complemented with thermal amplitude studies, as was mentioned also by Mesa de los Santos, and other aspects that are conducive to origin and quality. So in sum, we cannot say that differentiation is equals to ability to capture value. You have to think about in terms of this labyrinth of the different variables that play into capturing value, and you have to work. If you're a farmer or you're a country of origin, you have to work towards that. We should avoid what we had a few years ago, particularly here in Colombia, where coffees became a specialty once they were shipped, but the farmer didn't know that they were a specialty. So they sold their coffees at low prices, and someone else along the chain was able to reap the benefits of those quality differences. So these information asymmetries are not only to be solved with the standards, but also to be solved with institutional aspects, and also with tactics and understanding of your product, and having a deeper product knowledge. So you need to develop that product knowledge. You need to understand that relationship between origin and quality, and you need to understand what situation in terms of value chain governance you are, so that you can try to modify it and apply the marketing principles that from both emotions and rational aspects to be able to obtain or achieve that loyalty. By using that, or by using this, I dare to call it toolkit, but all these aspects, or understanding all these aspects, you may be able to modify that smile curve that we were talking about. So, smile, it is possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Don Luis. A very interesting presentation. I really appreciate all the insights in these intangibles that resonate a lot with the work that we are doing on CVA and the extrinsic definition that we use. We have an active chat, quite a few questions emerging. So let me try to use that as a quick reference. I think one of the first questions that we received was on this probably idea of digging a little bit more on the smile curve. We received several related with that, like what factors move the entire smile curve up, how we can particularly maximize the idea of distribution of value for farmers, and how they use these concepts to somehow capture more value. It will be great if you could provide some additional insights on this.
Well, I'm a firm defender or a firm believer that intangibles play a very significant role. And in fact, we produced, as Kim mentioned some time ago, try to understand how intangibles play different roles along the coffee value chain. In the different segments, you have the commercial segment that has a different intangibles, but you see the third wave or second wave segments, and they have the intangibles play different roles along the segments. So certainly you have to create interest. You have to develop and sophisticate or help sophisticate your coffee consumers, so that they are willing to pay more for their coffees. And that appreciation has to be based on product knowledge. That appreciation has to be based on different or enhancing the perception of value that particular attributes may have. We all know that that not all green coffee buyers appreciate the same things that roasted coffee consumers. Kim, in fact, mentioned a graph that compared the perceptions of wine professionals versus wine consumers. So the issue here is how to not only keep offering a high quality product, but keep offering a high quality differentiation narrative along the ways of what is interesting to consumers. And the human stories of coffee are beautiful, yes, but they are not enough. They are not going to lead you to quality. There are plenty of human stories of coffee that are beautiful, that are brilliant, that we love them. There are plenty of coffee landscapes around the world that we love them. And these will open the door for consideration. Yes. Will they create loyalty? They will create repeat customers? Not necessarily. We need to understand the origin, understand the relationship between that farm and the quality that it produces. And if we want to create collective value, we should not limit ourselves to one farm, one farmer, but hopefully a region, a single origin that can sort of raise the tide for more than one producer.
Thank you, Luis. That's interesting because we were discussing, I think that yesterday, about this idea of value chain governance and how that is, the elephant in the room that is always there, but usually on our collective blind spot. I don't know if considering this and this idea of, not thinking on a single farmer, but, a community or a region, if you could provide some ideas, suggestions based on your experience on what alternative governance models could be leveraged to expand this, let's say, the power of intangibles and value perception for consumers and the market, so the farmers and producers could, improve that value capture that you were referring to.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think is very relevant because we at producing countries are experts are complaining. In fact, we created. I'm going to say something that is probably not very politically correct, but we created the world's producing forum producers forum that I call it the world's complaining forum, because there is no solutions out of that. We stop. We don't take our initiative in our own hands in many cases, and we can change the governance, or we start to try to modify the governance by thinking about how to enter into different segments, by thinking about how to create relationships, medium, longer term relationships with target clients and target customers. We should not rest and believe that the world is the way it is and I cannot do anything about the world. We should try to modify our own world and our market situation by working on developing strategies to achieve that. Now, governance is also a set of informal and formal set of rules and even government regulations that may apply or may have an impact on particular transactions. So there are as well tools that you could try to play with to modify your governance structure or your governance situation. And I would also dare to say that intellectual property tools are also possible for producers to target and to achieve on a collective basis or on an individual basis. So there are opportunities out there, depending on a particular situation, on a particular context.
Okay, perfect. That's a great response. And it seems that, I'm seeing the chat and people is still asking a little bit more on how we can apply these concepts to try and build. This is a question from Camila. To build more equitable business relationship where both sides get to pick what is valuable. That's a big question, but at the same time, it could be associated with something that it's also referred on the question. It's the value of relationships on the value chain and how to, from those experiences, you can build that understanding and also create a good story. So I don't know if you would like to elaborate a little bit more in these commitments and long-standing relationship as a driver of additional value and a gateway for keep building those narratives that create capture more value, but also distribute more value with farmers.
Well, I was a big critic, or still are. I am a big critic of this model of a storytelling where you have this coffee hunter that I used to call at some point the Indiana Jones of coffee that will go to exotic places, find this coffee jewel, and bring it to market. And the hero of the overall story was the Indiana Jones, of course, not the coffee, not the origin, not the producer, but the one that found it, that discovered it. And that, and I think that, the market since then has somewhat evolved, and we see now very high profile baristas and other creating, partnerships with farmers, creating partnerships with particular origins, where you could have a mutual dependency or a relational governance type, in which they can create innovation. They start using alternative fermentation techniques, or even planting different genotypes, etc. And you have these relationships are ideal and can be, in my mind, created at very different single origin definitions. You could do it at a farm level, you could do it at a community level, at co-op level, at regional level, and even at national level. And for all these relationships, there will be different price points, there will be different opportunities to enhance or to communicate different attributes. But all of them will require deeper product knowledge. And now that I know that Michael Sheridan will follow us, I will ask him to please consider in his new role as Coffee Quality Institute executive director to devote more resources to understand the relationship between origin and quality. We have plenty of studies talking about the importance of coffee preparation and the millibars for espressos, and we have plenty of research also talking about the issues that relate to genotypes. We have work coffee research. We have also harvesting and post-harvesting research, and fermentation techniques, and so on. But the one thing that does belong to farmers, the one thing that does belong to growers, and which is the environment and the relationship between environment and quality, we have very little research. So we want to empower farmers. We have to understand their intangibles a lot better than we currently do, so that we can communicate them better and create loyalty for origin.
Wonderful. Yeah, I love that message, Luis. It deeply resonates with me, and the idea of intangibles and intrinsics, and how much we are still lacking in terms of knowledge to better understand that type of concept in the benefit of farmers. And one more question that I have here is this idea of a common language, in which the SCA Coffee Value Assessment represents a good example as a way to reduce transaction cost for increasing the efficiency of supply chain operation. During your presentation, you mentioned this tension of rational versus emotional arguments on building effective product narratives. Can you help me expanding a little bit more on this, and how, through a more, let's say, balanced approach, we could improve on quality signals that help farmers not only to differentiate, but to accrue more value for their effort, and also to mitigate the risk that they bear in coffee production? Because it seems like this question is also being referred in other doubts that I'm seeing in the chat.
Well, I think that both. I see that there are four big elements for that can build a 21st century brand, origin brand, or company brand, or whatever. You have the emotional, the rational, the experience, and the sustainability. Mm-hmm. Sustainability, of course, is a topic in itself. Experience, you have to sort of understand the experience in a profound way. So I'm not going to talk about that, but I'm going to focus on the two aspects that you mentioned, emotional and rational. And I think that there is not necessarily have to be a tension between the two. I think that they need to be complementary. Whatever you build in terms of emotional language needs to take you to the rational arguments. Emotions, as I said, open the door for consideration. But consideration is not enough. You have to convince yourself that you're buying a good product. Like that, expensive car buyer that needs to convince himself that he is going to drive 100 kilometers per hour in 4 seconds. You need to convince, the buyer that you're buying a good product. And that can only come from science and understanding, deep understanding of your product, for a long-term understanding of product knowledge, where you play up or you underline the origin aspect if you're a farmer. Because if you are going to underline all aspects that cannot belong to you, you'll go out to the world and say, I am a Rainforest Alliance producer. Well, there will be several Rainforest Alliance producers all over the world. So you are not going to have enough differentiation to build long-term loyalty. So you have to create the arguments of your farm or your community, of your country or your region, that explain why your coffee tastes the way it tastes. And that's and the emotional, tactics will sort of lead to that, to those arguments as well.
Agree, definitely. Such an interesting topic on this. Probably I'm going to find with one final question that could be a provocation to you.
I'm easy to provocate, so don't worry.
I know. You worked for a long time at FNC. There are also people from other institutions that represent coffee farmers worldwide attending this meeting, and this presentation in particular. And I would like to know, with all these concepts, with all these ideas, you have to pick like key recommendation for these institutions. What will be your recommendations to leaders and representatives from this producer organization worldwide on how to move the needle to create, market systems in which farmers receive more and leverage these intangibles for creating a more sustainable coffee industry?
Well, that's a very big question, because it's many countries and many different situations. I've been traveling to Africa, to Central America, to Brazil, to a number of coffee producing countries, and studying some of them in Southeast Asia. And so it's I think a single bullet answer is not possible or appropriate. I called it the coffee generation and the value generation, the distribution labyrinth, because it's complex. We live in a complex world. We cannot, there is so many people coming out with single easy solutions to complex problems in all facets of society, and we are sort of at the risk of making complex issues like you didn't need to work. I mean, you only have to complain and then everything will be solved. No, you have to work. You have to develop product knowledge initiatives. You have to think about the governance. You have to think about information asymmetry and how you can reduce it. You have to think about all these aspects in at the same time. Otherwise, you will not get the outcome that you want. So it's a very long equation at the end of the day. The value equation has many aspects to it, many different variables that you have to work in each one of them. Of the big thing that you have to do is understand that there are all these aspects, and understand what your current situation is, and how you can work in all the aspects that constitute that value assessment or component at the end of the day.
Wonderful. Yeah. Constant awareness. These markets are dynamic and ever evolving. Agree with that, Don Luis. Muchas gracias. I really appreciate all your insights, your patience in preparing this session. And well, hopefully we'll be talking anytime soon in the future. I'm going to move with my colleagues in the next panel that will be talking about sustainable sourcing strategies and value models. And hopefully I will share your question to Michael Sheridan to see if we can get additional insights on that, Don Luis.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.